Friends, I don't know if you're ready for this update. We just had this crazy weird reveal that I don't even know if it's a spoiler, but it's and I'm just like, I beg your pardon? After a year and a half in the making, we are finally able to answer the question, who is the best recommender on Booktube? Welcome to Battle of the Booktuber Championship round. This is a competition hosted by Danny Dabbles. Myself and 4 other competitors are going to be vlogging all month throughout July, and by the end, we will have someone going home with the crown. It's finally time to meet our champions, the winners of Battle of the Booktuber from 2024. Leandra the TBR0, me, won round 1. Then in round 2, we had Kirsten, the reading nymph, coming home with the prize. In round 3, Victoria Masters ended up winning her round. And then finally, rounding off the competition, we had Samantha Donovan winning round 4. But the audience also voted on a wild card, so Rainy Blue Reads is certainly going to be adding a little bit of spice to this competitive championship round. Who will take the crown? Time will tell. If you missed the rounds from last year, be sure to check them out. I'll have all of the necessary links below, as well as Danny Dabbles herself, because she deserves all the love. She's put so much effort into this, and honestly, every single person who's participated in this championship in the rounds previously deserve the love as well. If you're completely new to this concept, wow, do I need to have you catch up. But you know what? It's okay. I'm here. I will do my best to explain what Battle of the Booktuber is. What you need to know is that I have 4 competitors. We all have secretly recommended books to each other, as well as our host, Danny Dabbles. Every single week, as vlogs come out, we will be racking up the points, and obviously, the better the ratings for the books we've recommended, the more points we get. The way the championship round works is that we had to have 2 categories. One was our primary, the other one was our secondary. For myself, my primary is mystery, obviously, and my secondary is sci-fi. My competitors had to recommend 2 books per category for myself. Think of it as a recommendation and then an alternate, just in case something goes wrong. And since it's the second week, that means I am reading the books recommended to me by Booktuber number 2. You don't have to do too much catching up, but you probably should go back to week 1 just so that you know how the points ended up working out and what really is on the line going into week 2. For this week's vlog, I will be starting with my primary category, and the Booktuber recommended me 2 very different mysteries. The first position goes to The Palace of Lost Memories by C.J. Archer, and their alternate was We Solve Murders by Richard Osman. So I definitely couldn't have read the second option because I already DNF'd that. So this person was kind of already feeling the pressure, but lucky for them, I had never read this title by C.J. Archer. I looked into it, discovering that it was a fantasy mystery, which did pique my interest. So yeah, that's the one you're gonna watch me read first and see just what I thought of it. I am a third of the way through The Palace of Lost Memories by C.J. Archer, and I'm having a good time, but not a memorable time. And I promise that's not a play on the title. It's actually really fitting in a terrible way because I don't know what's going on. I kid you not. Before starting this recording, I have restarted the book 2 times, trying to retain the information that the author is giving me, and I don't have any solid criticisms. I don't know why this has been such a hard book to follow, beyond the fact that it may simply be a great palate cleanser. It's meant to be for a good time, not a long time, not a memorable time, and really the residual effect after I finish this book may be the tiniest thing ever. But let me get into the narrative, tell you about what's happened so far, and maybe in talking about it, I can pinpoint why it's just not working for me at the moment. This book is set in a fantasy world. We have royalty, provinces, we have mentions of magic, but it seems as though it's not used lightly and it's not used commonly. I say this because the palace itself is surrounded by mystery and rumor because it only took a matter of weeks to be built, and everyone within the village is thinking, this was sorcery, right? Clearly, they use magic to build the palace this fast. There also isn't much communication between the palace and the local villages, so I think that lends itself to this idea of there being this mass secret. Josie, our main character, who I really do like, and I'm not surprised because I loved the protagonist in C.J. Archer's other story that I read. It was the Cleopatra Fox mystery series. Josie wants to be a doctor, but unfortunately in this patriarchal society, women aren't allowed to attend the medical college. So to get her learning, she basically has to shadow her father, who's also a doctor, and he does allow her to do certain medical practices, specifically acting as a midwife for pregnant women in the area. Josie is on her way back from one of those appointments when she decides to pause and just admire the palace from afar, when this kind of crazy scene ensues. A cloaked figure on horseback rides past her, being chased by guards. Seeing her as a witness, these guards stop and ask her questions. The cloaked figure returns, shoots one of the soldiers in the arrow, and because Josie's the only person with medical knowledge in the area, she tends to this wounded man. While she's doing so, she gets to know them. The wounded man's name is Max. There's also this really kind of sweet youngster boy who's like probably a very young guardsman. His name is Quentin, and he of course is just enamored with Josie, and he's like blushing. He's very sweet, and Josie's just kind of like letting him, like, I don't know, try to impress her, even as he's kind of failing because he's like basically a little teen boy. And then we have the person who's clearly the love interest, Captain Hammer. And she is immediately enamored with him, his blue eyes, and just the way that they're talking. She's a bit flustered and can't help but pause every time and like kind of admire him. She comes on pretty strong, not verbally, like he doesn't feel her coming on strong, but in her head, I'm like, girl, you need to slow down. But anyway, as thanks, Captain Hammer takes her back to the village to make sure that she arrives safely. And as he does so, he asks her a bunch of questions about the province, her own experiences with medicine and other cultures, and she begins to think, this is a bit weird. Why is he asking me these questions? Because he should have the same knowledge I have. But that ends up being a question to be answered in another day, because she is dropped off with her father, and we don't really see them interact until finally the guards return, and it's to get help from her and her father because someone has fallen sick at the palace. The king's kind of favorite among a group of people who are visiting, because everyone's pushing him to get married, and so obviously this woman is probably at the moment the best candidate for potentially becoming his wife. It ends up being discovered that she has been poisoned purposefully with 2 different ingredients. So Josie and her father have to put in some work to figure out what the antidote might even look like, but they end up succeeding. They give her the antidote, and then Josie decides to stay at the palace to make sure that this woman recuperates and comes to full health, while also investigating, trying to figure out who could have poisoned her and why. While she's there, she does a bunch of snooping, and she ends up finding the area where all of the guards hang out, kind of where they reside. And of course, she runs into Max, the Hammer, as well as Quentin. And while she's discussing things with them, it ends up becoming like very obvious that they are keeping a huge secret from her. And one of the characters is his name Brent. He's kind of a jerk. He's definitely a bit of a misogynist, and I hate him. But he's the one who reveals to Josie what's going on in this mess, that no one at the palace has any memory prior to the palace being built. This goes from the lowest servant all the way to the king himself, and everyone at the palace has been keeping this secret as close to the chest as possible, because obviously if it gets out, there's the worry of, chaos, of people jumping to conclusions, maybe a coup, maybe a war from an outside land. And so they're trying to correct the situation, figure out why they all lost their memory alone without any outside help, until they bring Josie into the fold, and now they're saying, hey, can you help us? All while this is happening, obviously there is this mystery surrounding who poisoned this young woman that has the king's favor, and Josie and Captain Hammer are basically becoming like duo sleuths. They're becoming partners, trying to ask questions, interviewing staff members. And we just had this crazy weird reveal that I don't even know if it's a spoiler, but it's, I'm just gonna say it. We're only 30% in. If it ends up being a reveal, a spoiler, then really that's a critique on the author. But I'm assuming it's just kind of another meandering arc to distract us, a bit of a red herring. But one of the maids or the kitchen staff says that she overheard another maid say that 2 of the guests, who are brother and sister, are also lovers. That's right, we've got incest in the mix, and I'm just like, what just happened? And this is why I'm so confused, and I don't really know what to make of this book, because I'm finding it a very easy read while also not understanding how any of these puzzle pieces come together. I also feel as though the mystery of it isn't that much of an A-plot. So if we're questioning whether this is a fantasy mystery, I would argue it's probably more fantasy romance, and what has led Josie to reside at the palace for this brief amount of time is a mystery, acting more as a plot device than an A-plot. I am not going to fault the person who recommended this to me if it ends up being that this isn't really truly a mystery. But I just wanted to kind of address that at the moment, I don't really think that this is truly a fantasy mystery. But yeah, it's just one of those books that should intrigue me, and I do like the characters. I enjoy Josie, I like Captain Hammer, but I don't know why I'm not more intrigued. I'm not more excited to pick up this book. We'll see. We'll see what happens. At the moment, it feels like a fine read, and I wouldn't mind continuing. It's actually one that I'm kind of looking forward to continuing because I do like the narrative style. I just don't find myself attached. And on that note, I need to stop waffling because I don't really know what I'm saying at this point, but I'll give you guys an update when I get further, and hopefully I find the narrative more attractive and I can pinpoint really what's going on and why this first third didn't work for me while also working for me. Hello friends. So I am here, and I shouldn't be, because this is editing Leandra, and I swear this book doesn't want to be remembered. It does not want to be remembered, because not only have I recorded my final clip of this once, but twice in trying to convey what I thought when I finished The Palace of Lost Memories. I swear, there is a conspiracy. Fortunately, I actually do remember this book quite well, so maybe it's because I've recorded this a few times and it's kind of in the book's favor, but oh my gosh, we're gonna do this one more time, and then I'll carry on and introduce the next book that I'm supposed to be reading for my sci-fi category. So with The Palace of Lost Memories, I don't think I mentioned this, or I did very briefly, but I had read two books by C.J. Archer before that was a part of the Cleopatra Fox series. The first one was The Murder at the Mayfair Hotel, and then the other one was Murder at Piccadilly Circus. I read books 1 and 2 of that series, and both of them were entertaining. They were historical mysteries, so I knew what to expect going into C.J. Archer, but I obviously wasn't expecting a fantasy mystery. I didn't know how well they would translate from a historical mystery setting, and it did actually come together in the end. I continue to like Josie. She's a really great first main character. I wasn't as enamored by the romance. Maybe it's because the man's name is Hammer. Like, in earnest, his name is Hammer, and I'm just like, this is too weird. But once we got through the world building, I was actually enjoying myself. There were some twists. There was another death that I thought was absolutely not necessary. This death was anticipated very early on in the book. I will say there were many, many hints. I just didn't think they would happen in book 1 or as the way it did. I don't know how else to describe it without giving any spoilers. So I'll leave it there, and I was disappointed. I was actually like really upset that C.J. Archer decided to kill this character off so soon, because I felt like they had so much value to the story and there was so much more to tell through their character, but it is what it is. And then the incest element found its way throughout the story to the point where you just couldn't forget that it was there. And it was so weird. Moving on to the science fiction category, I obviously was recommended 2 books, but boy oh boy, did Booktuber number 2 have such a hard time recommending books to me, mainly because I had to reject the first one offered. The top recommendation given to me for my sci-fi category was Clara in the Sun by Katsuo Ishiguro. This one I had to reject as soon as I saw it on the list because I've already read it. I read 2 books by Katsuo Ishiguro. The person probably dodged a bullet though, because I've only given both books like 3 stars. I'm just not that impressed by the soft sci-fi writing that Katsuo Ishiguro gives us. So yeah, I really wasn't interested in this title anyway, or this author. So then Booktuber number 2 obviously had to use one of their precious exchange tickets to replace Clara in the Sun. They didn't have to. I could have just moved down to my second option, but they decided to take a chance, replace their number 1 option, and they ended up giving me The Luminous Dead by Caitlin Starling, and I rejected that one too because I just did not want to read it. And it's more than that. I don't want to suggest that I flippantly said no to this title. It's actually that there was a content warning about an anal transfer that I just did not want to read. There are also additional content warnings about like forceful and without consent medication being administered, and I don't know, I just did not want to. I didn't want to get into it, so I ended up rejecting that one as well. So whether they know it or not, I am reading the book in their second position no matter what. That also means that their exchange ticket was pointless. It was basically wasted on this. Hopefully they didn't have other places they could have used it, because yeah, it didn't work out for me. But the book I will be reading is Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I was actually shocked that this was put in the second position for sci-fi and that no one recommended this author to me in the first position. I'll admit that we were kind of encouraged to try different authors for each other, but arguably Adrian Tchaikovsky is a very new author to me. It was only in December when I read Service Model, and it was my favorite book of the year. So yeah, it all depends on when this person ended up submitting their recommendations. But yeah, I was really, really surprised, not only that it was placed in the second position, but that the person just didn't trust their gut and trust that they had a great alternate option. So yeah, I mean, the thing is, did it work out? That's the other question. I feel like this was an obvious title to recommend me, but it's also very, very different from Service Model. Not only is it more like chunky, it's like a super, super chunky book. It's like 600 pages, but it's more space opera, a lot heavier than Service Model is, because Service Model is kind of cozy dystopian. Plus, it was published 10 years ago, which I'm not gonna lie, if it's not a golden age mystery, I try to avoid any books that are published at this point before like 2020. I know that's a really harsh line to cross in the sand, but I don't know, things just don't age super well. So yeah, as intrigued as I was by this title, I mean, it does come with its worries, especially because it's so different from the book that I really loved. So, without further ado, let's get into Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I am finally just over a third of the way through Children of Time, so it's time for my first update. I have read the first 3 sections, aka chapters, depending on how you want to read it, and I'm about to start section 4, Enlightenment. I am obsessed with this. I'm having such a good time with this narrative, and I think what's enhancing my experience is that I'm getting to buddy read this with 2 other people who are participating in Battle of the Booktuber. It's kind of crazy because with the rules of this championship round, we were all being far more careful as far as making sure that we don't repeat suggestions, but that's only a restriction from the same competitor. So for instance, I couldn't recommend the same book to 2 different people. So that means because I am reading Children of Time and I'm buddy reading it with our creator, the host, Danni Dabbles, and we're reading it with the 3 of us, we're all recommended this book by 3 different people. And I think that that's so hilarious and really wild. I can't wait to kind of talk about that in the live show once, you know, all the results are in, because that was such a crazy thing when I was like, okay, I'm reading this, awesome. Someone else is reading this, someone else is reading this, and I'm like, what are the chances that this happened? So yeah, but I'm really enjoying my buddy read with them. We are taking our time because we're all kind of reading at different paces, but I think it's ensuring that the narrative really kind of steeps with us. We're getting to know the characters, the world. I think that all of us are collectively having similar feelings at the moment, but when we get into the nitty-gritty details and as far as ratings go, that might be drastically different just because this is a super chonky space opera sci-fi that is discussing, you know, not only advanced technology, but, you know, evolution and what it means to be human, especially if you're given the right genes or the right nanovirus. But I am getting ahead of myself. Basically, what I'm trying to say before I even get into the details is this is what I mean when I say I'm excited about Battle of the Booktuber. This is the type of book that I was looking for in this championship round, and I cannot be happier. The way this narrative is designed is through 2 different POVs. We have Holston Mason, our human perspective, and he is from a timeline that is way, way in the future. We're talking thousands upon thousands of years after Earth has inherently been destroyed, been rebuilt, and unfortunately after the next ice age, when everything melts, all of the toxins that we humans have put into the earth come up to the surface, and now it's doomsday once again. So Holston and another group of humans are kind of the last survivors, and they decide to go off into the universe and find another inhabitable planet, a different terraform world that they can try to at least keep the human race sustaining. They end up finding themselves arriving at this terraform planet that was built by the ancient humans. And this planet is called Kern's World because it's being protected by a scientist that is from the ancient times. So she's been alone in space, just barely surviving for these thousands and thousands of years. She's basically losing her mind at this point, and she doesn't want the other, new humans, the newly evolved humans, to basically take over her planet and ruin the experiment that is supposedly happening on said world. And this experiment was meant to be, monkeys that are eventually evolving into what humans are. And that was kind of the last ditch effort of the ancient humans for trying to keep humanity intact. I won't get into major details, but basically the plan did not go as expected. And rather than monkeys, related to humans on the planet, becoming the apex predators, becoming, conscientious with emotion, thought, the ability to build things, build a society, instead we have spiders basically taking over the planet. But not just spiders, other types of bugs or arachnids. We have ants as well, building an army, and it is just wild to have that perspective. So not only do we have the perspective of this classicist, Holston Mason? Yeah, Holston Mason. Not only do we have his perspective from the humans who are trying to arrive in this world, not even knowing what is down there, but they're just thinking, oh, it's designed for humans, we'll be perfect for it. Down on the ground, we're getting a POV from a spider named Portia, but all of her descendants. It's really cool to consider how Adrian Tchaikovsky has designed this, because we get to see little glimpses of history as these spiders evolve and how they kind of become, from primitive to building a society in which they have a culture, a language, and expectations for what the future is going to hold. It's so interesting, and I have no idea what's in store moving forward, because you can obviously see these perspectives moving ever closer to each other. The idea of one day the humans will arrive on planet specifically to inherit it, to take it over, and what are the spiders going to think about this? So anyways, I'm really loving it. I'm loving it so much. I'm having such a great time. And what's hilarious about this is I'm far more invested in the spider's perspective. I am so intrigued by Portia, by this other spider that she keeps meeting in all of her different lives, as the descendants, progress, named Bianca. And these female spiders, their perspectives on gender, on the expectation of also how you speak, because they speak through vibrations and movements. And oh my gosh, the linguistic brain that is my brain loves it so much. I'm so invested. And yeah, I'm getting the kind of sci-fi elements that I love. I'm getting the discussions of flora and fauna, the POVs that are non-human. I love non-human POVs in sci-fi. That's actually one of the big reasons why I really am gravitating towards sci-fi more and more this year. So yeah, I'm really, really loving it. And I'm going to tell you right now, with this type of chunky narrative, it's kind of crazy and a very new thing for me to say that this could be a 5-star read. So yay! Woohoo! I am hoping to provide another update 2/3 of the way per usual, but who knows, because I may just want to devour this, and I really shouldn't. I should provide you with an update. So I'll be sure to be a good reader, a good vlogger, but just know that I would love to really binge this and just continue on to book 2. Things could change. That would actually be so sad for me, but also for the booktuber who recommends it to me, because right now I'm like, yeah, you did a really good job. So thank you so much for recommending this book to me. I cannot wait to see what happens next in it. Friends, I don't know if you're ready for this update. I'm just kidding. I'm still having a great time with this book, and I'm still projecting it to be a 5-star read in this competition. So whoever recommended this to me, you probably should be feeling pretty good, unless the last 200 pages crash and burn. I don't see that happening, but you never know. There's a lot of this narrative to go, even though we've already read 400 pages of this book, which is kind of wild to me because, yeah, so much has happened. And I don't really know how to provide my thoughts on the events, but you know what? We're gonna do our best because I'm just loving it so much. I'm already trying to figure out when I could possibly take the time to read book 2, maybe read book 3 later on, anticipating book 4, which is coming out in 2026. Can you see that I'm already doing research? That is how much I am loving this narrative. And the thing is I think I said this in the first update when I was 2/3 of the way through the book, that I was more invested in the spiders, and that remains the case. I'm still heavily invested in Portia, Bianca. Now we've met a character named Fabian, so he's providing us with the male perspective in this female-dominated world. But I will say that what is going on with the humans right now is so interesting, and my analytical brain is having a field day. But let's go back and talk about what's going on with the spiders on Kern's world. So they are pretty much following almost like a step-by-step instructions of how human society was built, and I love that. You can tell that Adrian Tchaikovsky is clearly basing it off of human history, our own experiences on Earth as we were progressing, evolving, and eventually becoming the society that we are today, because the spiders experience war, then they experience plague, they experience religion, now they're experiencing advanced technology and huge questions regarding equality and equity, specifically between the males and the females in the society. And I'm just like, this is so interesting. And what I also find really just kind of eerie is that this book was written in 2015, right? We're now reading this in 2025. So there's been a 10-year gap since publication. But you know what happened smack dab in the middle of that timeline? COVID. We had the waves of COVID, the fear of a new pandemic that we didn't really know if it would end well and if we would find a vaccine in time to save a good amount of the population. It was a scary time. The whole thing is I find this very fascinating because Tchaikovsky obviously didn't know that COVID was going to happen, and yet I felt every single fear and concern that these spiders were feeling because I lived it 5 years ago. And so it just goes to show you that this book will probably remain topical, remain relevant forever, because human society, human history repeats itself. The ideas of war, the ideas of plague, of new advanced technology, both for good but also for evil, the questions of religion, of the purpose that we're on this planet. Why do humans exist? Why are we able to reason when other, plant life or animal life don't have the same capabilities? All of these questions will remain throughout history because we probably won't have these answers anytime soon, if ever, especially not in our lifetime. And I think it's so cool to see that being played out in Children of Time, but with arachnids. So yeah, no, I'm loving this. I'm loving all of the questions, all of the discussions. And now we're getting to the humans, right? Because eventually the humans have to meet the spiders. It's not going to go well, but we see that that's clearly where Tchaikovsky is leading us. And while the spiders are progressing with every century, every millennia, they are basically trying to catch up to where humans are. Meanwhile, the humans are experiencing a bit of a devolution. So not only has Earth died, and with that, a lot of our knowledge, a lot of our technology in the humans that are on the Gilgamesh, they are very much at a disadvantage compared to the humans that had originally destroyed the Earth. But at the same time, when we first met them, the spiders were far less advanced. But now we're seeing the humans devolve even further due to certain circumstances that are going on the ship. And I think that that's wild, because I'm wondering, by the time the humans and the spiders meet, will the spiders be more advanced? Will it be an exactly even playing field? I don't know, but I'm really excited to see what happens. So yeah, basically I'm just reaffirming all of my thoughts in the first update. I'm really enjoying this book. I'm thinking it's going to be 5 stars. If not, honestly, it's going to be a high 4, if anything. I really can't imagine what could happen that would make me hate this book, but you know what? Crazier things have happened. So yeah, on that note, I'm gonna go binge this, and hopefully I will see you all very soon. I have officially finished Children of Time, and I loved every second of it. Thank you so much, Booktuber number 2, whoever you are, because I can comfortably say this is an all-time 5-star favorite. I'm so excited to continue the series. I can't wait to see your reaction, because you should be so proud of yourself. This was such a good book. All 600 pages were worth the wait, worth the payoff of this ending. And yes, there are questions till in the end. I mean, that is typical of a series, but I didn't expect certain conclusions in the end, and I felt every single emotion possible. I felt fear. I felt excitement. I was worried about these characters, both human and spider, and it was so good. Truly, I don't really have many more words to say beyond the fact that The character development is on point. The world building is on point. The discussions that are cerebral, that are psychological, mental, emotional. There are some pivotal emotional moments where the heartstrings are pulled, but there's also a lot of action, battles, fighting, and just contemplation of the human condition. This has everything that I want in a book, and Adrian Tchaikovsky has truly become one of my favorite authors of all time already, even though I'm very early into investigating his canon. My first experience was Service Model, and now this is technically my third experience, even though I haven't finished another book that I've been reading by him, Alien Clay. So yeah, I really haven't met a book I haven't liked by him. So again, I'm just buzzing, and at the moment there are a handful of books left for Battle of the Booktuber that I need to get through in the timeline that I'm living, but this is my favorite book so far, and it quite possibly could be my favorite of the entire competition. We'll have to see, but yeah, I don't have much more to say because there's not much more to say beyond that I loved it, and you already know that. So yeah, that's it. That's all, folks. That's all I've got to say. It is finally time for me to reveal what my ratings are for The Palace of Lost Memories by C.J. Archer and Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. So I'm sure some of you have your own predictions, especially because I felt as though I was pretty obvious about my feelings for these two titles. But before I get into those ratings and kind of confirm what I may or may not have initially said about them, well, we have a secret to reveal. If you saw my first week vlog, you already know what the secret is, but my intention is to read all of the recommendations for me, not just the ones for the competition that will be earning my competitors points, but every single book recommended to me. And the thing is, this is one of the weeks that I really didn't do that. If we remember, after The Palace of Lost Memories, the alternate position was given to We Solve Murders by Richard Osman, and boy oh boy, that was such a bad recommendation for me. Whoever you are, Booktuber number 2, I'm so sorry, but I'm really not a fan of his work. I love him as a comedian, but Thursday Murder Club, that series, I DNF'd. I could not even get through the second book, and I realized that I probably inflated my rating for Thursday Murder Club significantly. And then when I tried We Solve Murders, when I had this wacky idea of trying to read all of the top choices for the Goodreads Choice Awards, yeah, I quickly realized that that was not going to be a good idea. No matter what I give The Palace of Lost Memories, you did right. It was smart to put that in the number 1 position, because if I hadn't have read We Solve Murders, it would have been a DNF for you, meaning no points. Meanwhile, we already know the fiasco that was the science fiction kind of recommendation attempts from Booktuber number 2. One of them I had already read, and also that title, for 2 reasons, tells me who Booktuber number 2 is. I will put a pause on that tangent because I want to do one thing at a time. But then Luminous Dead, I refuse to read that due to certain content that was mentioned in various reviews that just give me creepy crawly feelings. Wasn't gonna happen. And of course I ended up landing on Children of Time, and we'll start with that one. I officially own the book because I loved it so much. I'm 99% sure. I obviously just edited this video and for some reason I can't remember already, but I'm pretty sure I said what my rating was. It's a 5-star. I love this book so much. I cannot wait to continue the series because oh my gosh, Adrian Tchaikovsky, what can't he do, to be completely honest? And then we get to the mystery category, and this one's obviously a bit more important just because the rating is going to be multiplied by 3 in comparison to the sci-fi category. Because it's my secondary, it gets multiplied only twice. Still important, but not as significant as the mystery one. For Palace of Lost Memories, obviously there were some issues with it, and I don't think I mentioned the ratings I'd previously given C.J. Archer, but they involved a 3.75 and a 3.5. So my history with the author wasn't amazing, but also wasn't terrible. With that said, I do prefer C.J. Archer's historical mysteries to the fantasy mystery, meaning that in reality, I was kind of edging between maybe like a 2.75 and a 3.5. The reason why I'm thinking lower than 3 is just because I can't really see myself fully recommending this title when I sit with it. If I really consider the elements, the ending, and how just everything wrapped up, certain plot choices by C.J. Archer, I just think that the historical mystery is far stronger. So definitely try the author. But with this one, I don't even see myself continuing the series. I'm really not that interested, and I just don't care. I just don't care. And so this person is unfortunately going to end up getting a 2.75. But you did amazing with Children of Time. Don't forget that. You did so well with this book. I'm so grateful that I finally got to read some of the backlist for Tchaikovsky, and now I just want to read everything by him, to be completely honest. And now I suppose what we should be ending the vlog with is who I think booktuber number 2 is. I said just maybe a minute or two ago that Clara and the Sun was a huge indicator for me on who I think this is, and it's Victoria. Victoria, I think it's you because you really enjoyed Clara and the Sun. In fact, we have beef because you said it's better done, or at least you enjoyed it more than A Psalm for the Wild Built, and I'm just like, I beg your pardon? And because I know that you've read this author and you specifically really enjoy this title, that was the first indicator that I was like, this is Victoria. The second thing is that on Storygraph and Goodreads, it says clearly that I've read this. And if I'm comparing you, Victoria, to other booktubers, like my other competitors, they would all, I think, agree in saying that they're probably more active on Goodreads, a little bit more active on Storygraph. So I can't really see them missing that. If they did, that would really shock me because I think they're more active on it. Maybe not Kirsten, but Sam and Rainey are definitely way more active on Goodreads than I am. So I would be shocked if they didn't notice that I had already read that title. So Victoria, I think this is you, but it does mess me up that Luminous Dead was optioned because Caitlin Starling is a favorite author of Sam, I'm pretty sure. So I acknowledge that my own type of investigation isn't foolproof, but I do think it's you. Thank you all so much for getting to the end. I do appreciate you. Make sure that you catch up on week 1 of this competition if you've missed it. And also keep track of my fellow competitors. Keep track of Danni because her vlogs are coming out as well, adding to the chaos that is Battle of the Booktuber Championship round. In honor of Children of Time, give me an emoji that involves time. How about clocks? That's all I've got. How about a clock emoji if you're not feeling chatty? And let me know if you think that I'm right, that this is probably Victoria Masters, or if you think I'm wrong. I'll accept that too. Thank you all so much, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.